two mud-splattered Land Rover Defender 110s drive into the base. A man with a long scar over his right eye, a cold expression on his face, slowly steps out of the car. This person is nicknamed Le Chiffre, a specialist in illegal business, helping terrorist organizations launder money. This time, a mysterious figure named Mr. White has introduced him to the rebels. Le Chiffre, having just received $100 million from the rebel organization, immediately makes a phone call, ordering his men to short-sell the stock of an airline company. However, his assistant reports to him that the airline stock is currently only rising, not falling, so shorting it would result in a loss. But Le Chiffre seems to have already calculated this. He confidently says he has a way to make it drop. Under the scorching sun of a Madagascar summer, a crowd of black people is engrossed in watching a snake fighting match, a popular local entertainment activity. Bond and his female assistant, Vesper Lynd, are secretly surveilling a bomb-making terrorist. Looking at the numerous burns on his face, one can see this man has a lot of experience playing with fire. Just then, the terrorist receives a message with the coded content 3 dots. As soon as he sees the message and turns to leave, he suddenly discovers the agents who are watching him. The terrorist immediately flees. Bond chases him from a construction site up to a high crane, and then from the crane back down to the ground. Bond is not as nimble as the terrorist. He can only rely on his stamina and tenacity to stay on target. The terrorist runs into his country's consulate, thinking he is safe. Unexpectedly, Bond quickly climbs onto a truck, jumps over the fence into the consulate's courtyard. Without a moment's hesitation, Bond storms directly into the consul's office, knocks out the terrorist, and drags him away. The horrified consul presses the alarm button. A series of soldiers, brandishing AK-47s, rush out and fire towards Bond. Bond drags the terrorist to the back courtyard. Surrounded by the military, Bond lets go of the terrorist, suddenly pulls a pistol from his waistband and shoots him dead, then shoots a nearby gas tank. When the consul looks up, Bond has vanished without a trace. Bond finds the pre-made bomb and a mobile phone in the terrorist's pocket. He also sees the message with the 3-dot signal. Because of the commotion 007 caused in Africa, the female leader of the intelligence agency MI6 is furious. You were supposed to capture him alive and interrogate him to find out who bought the bomb. Now look, the lead is gone, the female leader said, annoyed. She even felt a bit nostalgic for the Cold War era, because at that time, troublesome agents like Bond would be executed by the government for treason. When the female leader returns home, she is surprised to see Bond already waiting in her living room. Still angry, she unleashes her fury on Bond. She bluntly points out the clear flaws of the newly appointed 007, too arrogant and too much of an ego. She gives Bond a long vacation to reflect on his actions, while also warning him not to come to her house uninvited again. But in reality, Bond is here for a purpose. Before she returned, he had secretly used his access to her computer to check the location from which the message was sent to the terrorist's phone. It was the Ocean Club Hotel on the island of the Bahamas. Bond wants to continue investigating this lead himself to find the mastermind behind it all. Bond arrives in the Bahamas, driving a Ford Mondeo towards the Ocean Club Hotel. This Mondeo is the latest model of its time, with an incredibly modern and fashionable design. Arriving at the hotel entrance, Bond bends down, pretending to tie his shoelaces, but he is actually observing the positions of the security cameras. However, this action of his is mistaken by two arrogant old men for a parking valet. Bond drives their Land Rover Range Rover Sport straight into the parking lot barrier, causing the alarms of a series of cars to blare simultaneously. The hotel security immediately runs out, and Bond takes the opportunity to slip into the surveillance room, which is now empty. Bond checks the time the message was received on the phone, 1910 on July 6th. He rewinds the security camera footage from that day and, sure enough, discovers that at that exact moment, a man was getting out of a 1964 Aston Martin DB5 and typing a message. Bond goes to the front desk, tells the receptionist that he accidentally hit an Aston Martin and wants to find the owner to apologize. This receptionist seems to be a gossip and immediately spills a stream of information about the man, from his name, home address, and personality to his hobbies. Bond learns that the man who sent the message to the terrorist is named Demetrius. He finds Demetrius's beachfront house and unexpectedly meets a beautiful woman riding a white horse. It is Solange, Demetrius's wife. Bond, with his muscular physique and captivating eyes, immediately catches Solange's attention. Seducing married women has always been Bond's specialty. Returning to his room, Bond uses the British intelligence's internal network to search for information on Demetrius. Finally, he discovers that Demetrius has a close connection with Le Chiffre. That evening, Bond goes to the hotel's casino. Demetrius is also there. Bond joins Demetrius's poker table. A while later, Solange also appears, but Bond notices the relationship between the husband and wife seems cold. In one hand, Demetrius bets his entire Aston Martin. It seems he is holding a very strong hand and is certain he will win. He looks at Bond with a provocative expression. Bond smiles and sees it through. Demetrius reveals his cards. 2 kings, a great hand indeed. He looks at Bond with the eyes of a winner. But when Bond reveals his cards, the smile on Demetrius's face vanishes. Bond has 2 aces. Bond wins. Demetrius is furious. He receives a slip of paper, glances at it, and leaves. It seems something urgent has come up. The person meeting Demetrius is Le Chiffre. They are accomplices. The black bomb-making terrorist was supplied by Demetrius, while Le Chiffre is the one behind the purchase of the bomb. This also explains why he was so certain earlier that the airline stock would fall. He planned to cause an explosion at the airport to manipulate the stock market. Le Chiffre expresses his dissatisfaction with Demetrius, so Demetrius promises to find a replacement. In another development, Bond has successfully seduced Solange. One has to admit, 007 is a master, not only winning the man's car, but also riding his wife. But Bond is not merely satisfying his desires. He wants to extract information from Solange about Demetrius's latest plan. Solange reveals that Demetrius is going to a museum on Miami Avenue tonight. Bond makes an excuse for Solange to leave, while he quickly drives to the meeting point. Demetrius arrives in front of the museum. Afterwards, he deposits a black briefcase and receives a claim tag, number 53. Bond secretly follows him. He sees Demetrius place the tag on a roulette table in the game exhibition area. Just as Bond is taking a closer look, Demetrius spots him. He holds a knife to Bond's back. The two struggle in silence. Bond cleverly takes down Demetrius and takes his phone. The most recent message sent from this phone is 3 dots. It seems Bond has found the right person. But when he looks back at the roulette table, Bond discovers that tag number 53 is gone. Rushing to the baggage claim area, the black briefcase has also vanished into thin air. Bond quickly uses Demetrius's phone to call the most recent contact. A young man in a dark jacket answers the phone. In his hand, he is carrying a briefcase. Bond follows him all the way to the airport. Bond realizes the briefcase he is carrying can pass through the security checkpoint. It turns out it's not a bomb inside, but a security staff uniform. The terrorist changes into the uniform, uses a code to open an internal access door, and goes inside. Standing in front of the door, Bond doesn't know the code. Suddenly, he remembers the 3 dots signal from the phone. He tries entering it, and the door opens. It turns out 3 dots is the airport's internal password. The terrorist, in a security uniform, drives a fuel tanker. He attaches the bomb, disguised as a keychain, to the vehicle and drives straight towards the new airplane the airline has just launched. At the critical moment, Bond jumps onto the tanker. The two engage in a fierce struggle. The terrorist gets away from Bond and jumps off the vehicle. Bond hits the brakes, but discovers the braking system has been sabotaged by him. The truck hurtles towards the plane. In the nick of time, Bond swerves sharply. The fuel tanker ultimately does not hit the plane, but stops safely right beside it. The police arrive and handcuff Bond. The terrorist, standing from a distance, looks at Bond with contempt. He presses the bomb's detonation button on his phone, but hears a beep coming from his own body. It turns out Bond had swiftly transferred the bomb to him. The plane does not explode. Le Chiffre fails to manipulate the stock price and loses over $100 million. On the outside, he remains calm, but inside he is burning with rage. He is certain there is a mole. The very next day, Bond discovers Solange's body on the beach near the Ocean Club Hotel. The female leader also arrives at the scene. Because Bond has just successfully thwarted a terrorist bombing, she informs him of his next mission. Le Chiffre has lost all the African rebels' money, so he is organizing a high-stakes poker game at Casino Royale in Montenegro. Only 10 players are allowed to participate, and each must put up a $15 million buy-in. The winner will take home $150 million. Le Chiffre is a master gambler. He wants to win back the money he lost. The leadership will send Bond to participate in this game. As long as they can make Le Chiffre lose, MI6 will protect him in exchange for crucial intelligence. The $15 million for Bond is paid by the British government. But because the sum is so large, the Treasury has sent a female agent to accompany Bond to oversee the use of the funds. This beautiful colleague's name is Vesper Lynd. She is intelligent, charming, but her initial impression of Bond is not very good. She doesn't trust him, so she doesn't give Bond all the money at once, only providing $10 million up front. Bond feels annoyed on the way to Montenegro, so the two constantly bicker. Upon arriving at the hotel, Bond receives the keys to his special car. Finally, Bond's familiar companion appears, a silver Aston Martin DBS. As 007's dedicated vehicle, its secret compartment also contains a medical kit, an antidote, and a Browning HP pistol fitted with a silencer. Bond and Vesper Lynd contact Mathis, the local contact. He is the only intelligence officer here. Thanks to Mathis's help, Bond smoothly enters the poker game. Initially, Bond keeps losing, but he notices a small tell from Le Chiffre. Whenever he's about to bet, his left eye twitches slightly. He would raise his hand to his eyebrow to hide it. Bond thinks he can exploit this weakness in the later hands. Bond calls a waiter and orders a martini. It seems he knows a lot about drinks. During a break between hands, Le Chiffre returns to his room. Unexpectedly, the African rebel leader is waiting for him with an angry look on his face. He gives Le Chiffre 1 day to return the money, or he will take his life. Just as the leader steps out of the room, he discovers Bond and Vesper eavesdropping in the next room. And so, Bond and Vesper are pursued. A life-or-death brawl breaks out in the fire escape. They fight from the upper floor all the way down to the ground floor. The rebel leader reaches for a gun that had fallen nearby. Seeing the critical situation, Vesper lunges forward to help Bond knock the gun out of his hand. In the end, Bond chokes the leader to death. As an accountant who had never killed anyone, Vesper trembles with fear after witnessing the horrific scene. She hides in the bathroom, trying to wash the blood from her hands, but it seems futile. Seeing Vesper like this, Bond suddenly feels a pang of sympathy. He comes and sits next to her, holds her tightly, giving her his warmth. Bond's icy heart also seems to be gradually melting. Back to the poker game. The 5 community cards on the table are 2 jacks, 2 kings, and 1 ace. Bond's hand is a king and an ace. Combined with the community cards, Bond can form a set of 3 kings and a pair of aces. This is called a full house, a very strong hand. Seeing Le Chiffre frown hesitantly, Bond bets $2 million. Le Chiffre thinks for a moment, then goes all in. The pressure is now on Bond. If he folds, he will lose the $2 million he previously bet. If he calls, he must bet all the money he has, just like Le Chiffre. Bond sees Le Chiffre raise his hand to his eyebrow again and thinks he is bluffing, so he decides to go all in. They both reveal their cards. Bond has a full house, 3 kings and 2 aces. Le Chiffre also reveals his cards. He has 2 jacks, which, combined with the community cards, form 4 of a kind, jacks. 4 of a kind is stronger than a full house. Le Chiffre wins the entire pot. Before leaving, he looks at Bond with a meaningful glance. "You thought I was bluffing, Mr. Bond?" Losing all $10 million, Bond feels extremely bitter. He wants to borrow the remaining $5 million from Vesper to continue playing. But Vesper thinks Bond is too arrogant and reckless, so she refuses. Just as Bond is feeling frustrated, Le Chiffre walks past, whistling. Bond becomes even angrier, grabs a knife from a dining table, and chases after Le Chiffre. But on his way, he is stopped by a man with a goatee. It turns out this man is a colleague of Bond's, a CIA agent. His name is Felix Leiter. Leiter lost his money even faster than Bond, and was probably running out of funds himself. Therefore, he wants to propose a deal to Bond. Leiter will give all his remaining money to Bond. And if he wins, Le Chiffre will belong to the CIA. So what about the winnings? Leiter scoffs at him. "You think we Americans are short on cash?" Bond takes Leiter's money and returns to the table. This time, Bond plays more and more aggressively, and soon wins back a considerable amount of money. Le Chiffre starts to get anxious and plays dirty. He has someone secretly poison the martini that Bond ordered. Bond drinks the cocktail without any suspicion and immediately feels something is wrong with his body. He quickly leaves the table to save himself. He grabs a glass and a salt shaker from a nearby table and runs to the restroom. By now, Bond is starting to feel dizzy. He gulps down salt water and throws up. Bond stumbles back to his car. He calls MI6 headquarters. Following the doctor's instructions, he injects himself with the antidote. But when he uses the defibrillator, he presses the button several times with no response. It turns out the cord wasn't plugged in. Bond's heart stops, and he passes out. At this critical moment, Vesper runs in. She quickly plugs in the cord and activates the defibrillator. Bond is saved. As soon as he wakes up, Bond immediately returns to the poker table. Le Chiffre can't believe his eyes. Only Bond and Le Chiffre are left at the table. The two enter the final showdown. The community cards are A, 4, 6, and 8 of spades. This time, Bond proactively goes all in. Le Chiffre looks at his cards, smiles, and also goes all in. The total pot on the table has now reached $150 million. A single hand to decide the winner. Le Chiffre reveals his cards first. His hand is an ace and a 6, an extremely strong full house. 3 aces with a pair of sixes. Le Chiffre looks at Bond triumphantly, already considering himself the winner. Bond also reveals his cards, a 5 and a 7 of spades. Both are spades. This is a straight flush, a hand even stronger than a full house. Bond wins. Le Chiffre storms off in anger. Bond generously tips the dealer $500,000. After all, it wasn't his money. As Bond steps out of the hotel, he discovers Vesper being abducted by a group of men. Bond rushes to his Aston Martin DBS. He chases after them in his car. Going over a hill, he is horrified to see Vesper lying unconscious on the road. He swerves sharply, causing the car to lose control and flip several times. And just like that, he passes out. Bond is taken to an abandoned warehouse. They strip him naked and tie him to a chair. Le Chiffre also appears. He uses the most brutal methods of torture to force Bond to reveal his bank account password. But despite the savage torture, Bond clenches his teeth and endures, not saying a single word. Just then, the warehouse door opens. Mr. White, Le Chiffre's associate, walks in. He shoots Le Chiffre dead. When Bond wakes up, the first person he sees is Vesper. By now, Vesper has fallen for Bond. And Bond had fallen in love with Vesper long ago. The director of Casino Royale comes to see Bond and wants to transfer the $150 million to him. He asks Bond to enter the password for the transfer. Bond tells Vesper to do it for him. The password is Vesper's name. Vesper's final defense completely collapses. She is deeply in love with Bond. The two spend a happy time together. Bond thinks it's time for him to give up this dangerous life and live a normal life with the woman he loves. On the train to Venice, Bond writes a resignation letter to M. But how can a professional agent live a normal life? From the very beginning, their tragic fate was sealed. That day, Vesper goes out shopping. Bond is alone in the room when he receives a call from M. M's words shatter Bond's beautiful dream. M asks him why he still hasn't transferred the huge sum of money into the government's account. Bond had thought that on the day he told Vesper the password, the money had already been transferred. Bond rushes out to find Vesper. He finally finds her in a small alley. By now, Vesper has withdrawn all the money and handed it over to a mysterious organization. The members of the mysterious organization spot Bond. A fierce shootout ensues in an old building. Due to the intense firepower, Bond breaks some of the flotation bags in the building's foundation. The building begins to shake and slowly collapses into the water. Bond eliminates all of them, but Vesper is trapped in the old elevator and sinks into the sea. Bond dives down desperately to save her, but Vesper pushes him away. She feels guilty towards Bond and wants to be set free. Bond brings Vesper to the surface. Despite his best efforts, Vesper has become a cold corpse, and the $150 million have been taken by the mysterious Mr. White. Over the phone, M tells Bond the truth about Vesper. It turns out Vesper had a boyfriend, and they were very much in love. After Bond won the poker game, the mysterious organization behind Le Chiffre kidnapped Vesper's lover, forcing her to retrieve the money. Vesper was forced to comply, but she had also fallen in love with Bond. Feeling guilty towards Bond, she decided to seek death. Bond once again becomes the cold, ruthless agent. This unfinished love affair is buried deep in his heart. But before returning, Bond wants to find the real mastermind. He sees a saved message from Mr. White on Vesper's phone. Bond decides he will start with him. A sleek, black Jaguar XJ8 glides to a stop in front of a luxurious villa. Mr. White steps out of the car, leisurely admiring the charming scenery. Suddenly, his phone rings. "Hello, is this Mr. White?" "Who are you?" "The name's Bond. James Bond." Then, Bond, from up high, shoots him in the leg. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What did you think of this movie? Please comment down below.